Hello everybody, Nathaniel from RCInsight here, and in today's video, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at some LEGO lighting kits. With me here, I have a kit for the LEGO Ferrari Daytona SP3 and the LEGO Ninjago City Gardens, so one Technic set and one system set. And these were sent to me in the mail by Lightailing. Huge thank you to them for sending them my way. I really appreciate it. Lighting kits have always been something that I've been interested in and I've kind of wanted to test out, but you never know with stuff like this if it's as advertised. Oftentimes lighting kits are not all that cheap either. So with all the money I spend on LEGO, I just never was willing to pull the trigger on the lighting kits, but Lightailing sent these to me specifically so that I could try them out and see what I think. So again, a huge thank you to them for sending these to me. I really appreciate it. The way this video is going to work, I'm gonna give a comprehensive overview of these. We're going to start with unboxing them, then we're going to go into the assembly. I'm going to give some of my thoughts on how it looks when it's finished, and ultimately finish by saying, hey, are LEGO lighting kits worth it? That's the question we're going to try and answer in today's video. There will be chapters in the description down below. That way you can skim or jump to the parts of the video that interest you the most. One other thing before we get into this though, if you guys want to test out Lightailing lighting kits for yourself, there's also a promo code down in the description that you can check out so that you can get a discount from Lightailing on your purchases as well. So once again, a huge thank you to Lightailing for sending these my way and also giving out that promo code so that you guys can get your own Lightailing kits a little bit cheaper. With all that out of the way, I don't really have anything else to say, so let's jump straight into unboxing this. All right, and you'll notice here the one kit has a plastic wrap on it and the other doesn't. The Ninjago City Gardens lighting kit was actually out of stock, and they still managed to send me a copy of it anyway. It took a few weeks. There's a bit of a delay, but it got it to me. So again, I'm really grateful for that. I'm going to assume that's probably why, like, this one was in stock and shipped out right away. That's probably why there's the wrapping here. And this one, I'm thinking that's why it's not. But otherwise, I can't really explain why one of them has wrapping on it and the other doesn't. So I think that's the most likely explanation. Again, big thank you to Lightailing as I'm opening this up for being able to get me a kit that's not even in stock. I really appreciate that. That's awesome. So I can't thank you guys enough. And let's get this wrap off here. Okay, I made that harder than it had to be. But yeah, let's take a look at what's inside. So these should, oh, there is tape on them as well. Oop. And then they should open relatively easily. Look at that. There you go. Scan the QR code for a PDF version of the manual. And in the box here, we've got a manual on the top. And then underneath in bubble wrap, we have all of the lighting kits here. Let's take a look at let's take a look at these. There's actually quite a lot, at least for our Daytona, there's quite a lot in the box here. And then let's push this to the side here for a second and take a look at what comes in the Ninjago City one. I'm assuming it's going to be very similar. The instruction book in this one was a little kind of folded through the bottom. But then, yeah, more of the same. It looks like maybe a little bit less in the way of lights for this guy. But we have our different lighting kits here nonetheless. So that's really cool. That's what you get in the box. I kind of was expecting it. So the overall unboxing experience here is pretty much what I would expect. It's really clean and well organized. You've got an instruction book and all the parts coming in the box. It was nice and densely packed. I'm impressed. A very professional presentation. The actual unboxing part was pretty much what I was expecting. What I'm really curious about is how these actually go together, how easy that process is, and then what it looks like as well when it's done, especially because I've got both Technic parts and regular standard system parts. So to be able to compare those is going to be really interesting. So that's what I'm going to go do now. I'm going to put these lighting kits on, see how that process goes, and then talk about it. So let's first start by talking about the assembly process for these lights while this time lapse of me installing them plays in the background. The first set I installed lights for was the Ferrari Daytona SP3, and admittedly, I was a little worried that with such a big and complicated Technic model, the disassembly required for attaching the lights would be quite difficult. So right off the bat, I have to say props to Lightailing for knowing what they're doing, because these lights look great and they're set up in the most perfect places, yet the disassembly required here to make it work was super straightforward and hardly a challenge at all. I actually found the Ninjago City Garden set much more difficult. So I was pleasantly surprised by the assembly process. I also wasn't sure what the lights would be like for the Technic sets, since I know for regular system sets they actually have light up bricks, but here it was mostly just strip LEDs with sticky backs that stick onto the sides of long Technic bars. This worked really well, and minus it being a little difficult to get the paper off the LED strips, everything else assembled super easy. I was also very surprised by just how well the lights stick on. If I misplaced one, which I did a couple of times, it was a real pain to get them off after that, which I ultimately think is a good thing. However, this is where the one issue with the assembly really comes in for me. While I was amazed at how easy the disassembly was and how easy it was to stick the lights on, the instructions felt like a challenge. Not a challenge to follow per se, they were actually pretty straightforward on the LEGO side of things. It was the light side of things where I thought it could be a lot clearer. The biggest issue I had here was with what end of the strand you were actually starting with. Multiple times on both models, I started installing the lights from the wrong end of the strand, thinking that the install would start at the end and then work the way towards the battery pack, when instead it seemed to almost always be the opposite, starting at the battery pack and working towards the end. So yeah, if you have installed a bunch of lighting kits and got the hang of it, this probably won't end up being much of an issue, but as a first-time user, I found it really hard to follow what strands I was using and where in the strand I was when putting the pieces on. The only way I could figure it out was by looking way ahead in the instructions, sometimes more than 30 steps ahead, and even then at times I was unsure and had to reverse course, and that definitely does not make for an ideal building experience. The Ninjago City Gardens was a similar but also completely different building experience. With all the multitude of lights connecting to a single battery pack instead of two like on the Ferrari, and that one battery pack having like 6 or 7 different strands branching out of it, following the installs for these lights was even more difficult. Much to my surprise, the disassembly here was also much more extensive and challenging. The Daytona only took me a few hours in all to install the lights. For Ninjago City Gardens, it probably took upwards of 6, spread out over the course of more than a week because I was super busy, and also the disassembly just wasn't super exciting. While the final product for the gardens looks great, the assembly definitely felt like a chore. In particular, the removal of so many 1x2 tiles that make up the water to facilitate stringing the lights throughout the build, it was tedious. I get why it was done, and later I'll touch more on how well these wires are hidden, but nonetheless, it was still extremely, extremely tedious, and I did not find the building experience for the gardens to be all that pleasant. It did utilize actual bricks with LEDs attached to them rather than sticky strips, which actually made it more challenging, I think. The instructions, while easy to follow for the assembly and disassembly, struggled from the same difficulty of figuring out what the heck you were doing with the light strands. That difficulty was only compounded by the fact that it is a whopping 198 steps for the LED assembly for the gardens. And again, I want to emphasize that this really was quite the project to install all the lights. It was no small task. I also had some trouble pulling through the lights at various points and even messed up and dropped part of the top of the tower at the very end when I was getting just increasingly frustrated and ready to be done with this. That said, the length and intricacy of the install isn't necessarily a problem. It's long for a reason, there are lots of lights used to light this thing up, and the attention to detail is very strong, something that I really appreciate. Just be prepared that installing these lights is not a small operation. It is something that takes time, and it is really almost like building a whole set. The difficulty in following the process and always having to look ahead, that just makes it a little less streamlined and in turn a slightly less easy and fun process. Moving on to how the lighting looks when installed, well, that's where once you're done with them, you'll likely forget any frustration you had during the install. The final product here looks great. Initially, I thought the lights on the Ninjago City Gardens in particular looked a little bright, but all in all, they've come around on me and I think they look fantastic, especially on the Daytona SP3. Clearly, a lot of thought and time has gone into making these lighting kits work, not only in identifying where the lights can go to complement the overall look of the build, but also in how they're strung together, how the little wires show, and how well they're hidden most of the time. Even in some of the places where they're a little more obvious, it was usually because I simply wasn't quite as particular when it came to hiding the wires as the instructions showed. Obviously, you can't completely hide the wires on the Ferrari. You can see a lot of the wires running underneath, or with the Ninjago City Gardens, they are connected at one point behind the build, but this approach is perfectly fine with me as those wires are out of sight 99% of the time. In terms of how the lights actually work, the kits come with a battery box, 1 or 2 in the case of the Ferrari, and they take 3 AA batteries each. For the Ferrari, they were cleverly hidden inside the hood, but with the Ninjago City Gardens and probably most other similar sets, the battery box is just sitting on the counter behind the display. Easy to access in order to turn the lights on and off, but also out of sight. There are a couple other things that cropped up while building these sets that I thought were worth mentioning. Firstly, there is a warning at the very beginning about being careful and not breaking these wires. I'm sure breaking does happen frequently, especially when people are being careless, but the wires never felt particularly fragile or vulnerable to me either. When I was installing them initially on the Ferrari and the instructions showed the wires going between the pieces and then those pieces closing so that it was kind of stuck in between them, I was worried that I was reading the instructions wrong and that would wreck the wires. As I progressed through building, I realized the wires were frequently pinched between pieces to disguise them. So again, while carelessness might damage or break them, I still feel like the wires were pretty durable. I was also surprised for the system sets that the bricks that had the lights attached to them were genuine LEGO bricks. They had obviously been ordered as individual parts by Lightailing and then retrofitted with the lights afterwards. This helped me understand the price tag a little more as you are installing actual LEGO bricks to your set and not just knockoffs, and it obviously helps with the overall compatibility of the lights as well. That does mean that you will be left with at least some extra parts at the end, and you will have to remove some of the original bricks for the set in order to replace them with the bricks that are fitted with the lights. The last thing I feel is important enough to mention is the transportability of these once you have the lights installed. Initially, I thought you probably wouldn't want to be moving these sets around too much once you had hooked the lights up, because it was just one more thing you had to be careful with and worry about when transporting. After assembling, I found this really wasn't an issue for the Ferrari because the lights are also self-contained. It's still really easy to move. In reality, this would probably be the same for most sets, but not all. There was one big hitch when it came to the Ninjago City Gardens set, and this is something that would likely be true across most of the very big sets, and that's the fact that the Gardens only has one battery box, and the set is actually so big it's designed in 2 separate modules to make it possible to move. You can't move it just as one. Because both modules are strung together, once you've installed the lights, it becomes impossible to move with just one person. Me and my dad had to move it together from where I installed the lights to the display shelf, being careful to stay close enough that we wouldn't rip the wires apart, each of us holding one section of the build as we transported it. So I imagine you would come across similar problems in sets like Rivendell, which again gets broken down into 3 smaller components for the sake of transportation. For sets the size of Ninjago City Gardens, it's really not portable once the lights are installed, so wherever you have it is almost certainly where that set is going to be displayed. It's just not something you're going to be moving around, so you're going to want to keep this in mind if you're the type of person that does move your sets a lot, has rotating displays, or even pulls sets down from the shelves to play. For the bigger sets, the lights will definitely affect your ability to do any of that, and you will probably want a permanent home for the model. Alright, so now that I have covered everything about the lights in detail, let's get down to the question that I'm sure most people are here for. Are these lights actually worth it? I would say yes, sometimes. After having had a chance to build a couple of lighting kits, I think there's some people who will love them, but they are not for everyone. So firstly, let's talk about the price. The Lightailing kits are probably the most affordable choice on the market when it comes to lighting kits, often being cheaper than Brixmax kits and considerably cheaper than Light My Bricks kits. That makes them a great entry point and probably a good option to consider if you want to try them out for yourself. They're still not cheap, but I did feel the price was justified. After all, you're getting LED lights, real Lego bricks in these kits, and also a high level of polish in terms of the instructions and the packaging, all that sort of stuff. You don't have batteries included, but it still feels all very professionally put together, and you can see where your money is going when you're buying these lighting kits. However, because of the price, even for the cheapest of options, you are still probably not going to want to buy lights for all of your sets. In fact, you won't want to buy lights for all of your sets, I can tell you that right now. I think the value shines through most for big collector sets that are going to be sets that you want to have on display permanently and really wow people. Sets that just sit there and collect dust, or you'll ultimately end up bagging up, are not going to be worth getting lights for. The lights are also inherently display-oriented rather than play-oriented. That means they target someone like me perfectly because I am a big display person. I love to build my models and then meticulously arrange them and display them to show off how cool they are. They are great for sets that have a permanent location, but not so great if you moved your sets around, if you play with them, or are just generally less invested overall in how you display your models. I also think you want to be specific when it comes to picking what you want to light up. For me, I'd want to light up things like cars, modulars, and my Winter Village collection, but not so much something like my Hedwig set, or even Rivendell where the lights don't feel nearly as natural. Like LEGO itself, I ultimately think the value you get out of the lighting kits will come down to how selective you are. Making sure you're only spending money for the sets you really want to display and show off, and not getting lights for anything and everything, because even if you could, I think that would start to get overwhelming. So overall, I'm really impressed with my first lighting kit experience. If there's something you've been interested in, then I definitely think it's worth getting some kits to, at the very least, check them out. They clearly have a target audience though, and are not for everyone, both based on the price point and the impact on the displayability versus play of the models. At the end of the day, I think anyone who gets a lighting kit will ultimately see the value, but that doesn't mean they're going to be right for everyone. That's where, as a buyer, you have to figure out for yourself if this is the route you would like to go with your collection before investing in thousands more on lights. Like I said, it's a very good product and I was impressed. I think the value is there, but it is definitely not going to be something for everyone. That is going to do it for my review for the Lightailing lighting kits, though. Once again, a huge thank you to Lightailing for sending these to me. I really, really do appreciate it. Maybe in the future, I will look into doing a comparison of some of the different types of lighting kits and options that are out there, kind of give my opinion on which ones I think are best. But for now, this is all I have for you. Hopefully you appreciated this really comprehensive look at the lights from the moment you get them in the box to the final completed product. If you did like this video, please leave a like down below. It's a great way for you to show your support. Let me know that you guys like this kind of content. Subscribe for more videos like this. Well, not exactly like this, but I have lots of LEGO content on my channel, LEGO news videos, reviews. I'm kind of dabbling in some rankings and video essay type stuff as well. So again, anything LEGO related, it's all on my channel. So if that interests you, please do go check it out and subscribe so you do not miss my videos when they come out. And with all that said, I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and I will see you all in the next one.